Hi, my name is Phil Davies and I'm the CEO at FlyForm. I'm joined today by Adam Haylock from ServiceNow, and we're going to be talking about best practices for populating your CMDB and some best practices around the ServiceNow ITOM suite.
Thanks, Phil. Great to be here with you today.
Thanks.
So I'm Adam Haylock, a senior solution consultant working for ServiceNow. I work in our alliance and channel ecosystem team. And my role is to work with partners and help them in various ways. But ultimately, my responsibility is to ensure that their customers are successful when delivering their own transformational programs.
Great. And yeah, again, glad to have you here. One of the things I want to touch on before we get into kind of the meat of today is around the ITOM suite and ITOM in general and what it means for people, because some people still don't know. Obviously, as an acronym, it's IT Operations Management. And how I try and describe this to our clients or prospects or people we're talking to is that the ITOM suite really brings the kind of the clever tech and the kind of automation around the other processes, be it ITSM or HR or whatever. And we very much hone in on things like discovery, service mapping, orchestration, and kind of a lot of these tools for some people that are in nirvana, but for us very much sit at the heart of getting the value out of these products. It
really is about the value. So you talking there about discovery and service mapping. For me, what that offers organisations is visibility, true information and visibility across their entire organisation, and making sure that what they're doing and how they're operating is really aligned to their business goals. And again, orchestration is huge. So orchestration, what does that mean? Basically, it means you can make stuff happen automatically. And when you start thinking about that, and we start doing that in IT and through the rest of the organisation, it's of huge value.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're tying this in with CMDB is getting that rich CMDB in the first place and having all that data in there correctly is what will underpin your capability to do orchestration. If you haven't got the right CIs in there, or you haven't got the right credentials, or whatever those things may be, you can't unlock the rest of the potential. And you might have already decided to buy this tech. So brilliant. We talk about this in every CMDB conversation now, is if the CMDB isn't complete and it's not accurate, it's not maintained, the value is in some cases almost zero, because as soon as you have a major incident or you're doing a change and that data's wrong and it undermines your faith in that data and it means you're back to manual checks, it completely erodes any value you've potentially got there if that data is incorrect.
Exactly, and I know you do a lot of good work in this space, so you get it, but it's absolutely critical to organisations that they have an effective CMDB. And ultimately that comes down to having the right information in there. So we've all seen it in our careers. We worked in IT for many years. I won't tell you how long I've worked in IT. And we see a combination of types of CMDB. Some aren't CMDBs at all, they're just Excel files, whatever. So where discovery comes in and has its key play is it's going out into the organisation's network and finding what those assets are. So everything, whether that's computers, servers, on-prem, in the cloud, assets, desktops, laptops, everything, and bringing that back into the organisation automatically. And
I think that's the huge saving there, isn't it? And the huge thing is not rely on the human error or the manual processes to keep getting that stuff in, getting this section right after you've got your good design, nailing this bit then and making sure it's always up to date and maintained, then gives everyone that kind of bit of confidence and ideally delivers the value that they expect to get from the CMDB in general.
Confidence and a value are key. So if you lose confidence in your CMDB, then where are you? You're not going to be making good decisions off the back of that. It's not going to help you align with your organisation's business goals and objectives. So confidence is absolutely key part of that, and that's what discovery will give you, because it is accurate.
I agree. In fact, the last thing I will say on this is we're more often than not now in our meetings, our initial meetings with clients, we kind of try and pair them as a de facto. We kind of say, look, if you buy an ITSM and you don't have a discovery tool, we recommend to get the most value out of an ITSM implementation on day one. Just take discovery, get that automation straight in there, treat it as almost as part of your ITSM, budget, and get that in.
It's helping and advising. This is the role you play, advising your customers to make smart decisions. So if you are investing in a CMDB, then let's do it right. Let's pick the right options at the right time. We don't have to do it all, but discovery is probably right up there.
And even if that's a small bit to start, we'll discover these bits just to show you how the tool works, get your flavour for it. But let's do something to move toward that path that you're talking about, because you often go into the meeting with them and they're talking about this fantastic goal they've got for the tool. but they've only talking then about doing this little job at the start, and there's no follow-on. So.
Exactly.
Great. So I think for me, when it comes to top tips for populating the CMDB, rule number one is always automate. You can look back 5-10 years ago where it was much more common practice for people to be manually updating CMDBs, whether that's literally manually inputting data or even uploading spreadsheets, whatever that may be. But for us now, we tell everyone we speak to, if unless there's a major compliance or security or budgetary constraint that's going to prevent you using an automated tool to populate, then you should always do it.
Of course, because that's where we get the accurate data. Yeah. And if you think about it, some of these organisations have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of assets. So you have no choice, you have to automate it, otherwise you're just going to fail. Yeah, and when it comes down to that human error, we've seen, for example, with a client, things ranging from someone just not updating it out of they've missed a job, through to someone going sick for 3 to 6 months, and then no one's noticed, and 6 months later, the CMDB's never been updated. Even if you've got the processes there,
things happen one day. So the second part we talk about for our top tips are integrations. So where we try and focus on integrations is either things like air-gap networks or maybe, say, for example, mobile devices. So things that ServiceNow Discovery tool may not be able to get to or may not pick up. And when you do use those integrations, then potentially for other types of CI classes is to enrich the data. So bringing in more information, so maybe from a VMware environment or something else where it's got a lot more kind of juicy data that you need. Yeah,
and it's a great point because ServiceNow, will capture so much of your organizational CIs and populate that into the CMDB. Yeah. But it's important that the organization knows what they want to capture. Yeah. And if you need to pull in some integrations or whatever to make sure you get the vital points, and absolutely it can be done. So do look at your integrations.
Yeah, it ties back to our data model point in one of our previous videos where we talk about you've got to get it on paper, what are you trying to capture, and then where you're trying to capture it from. And you may go down the list and the top 10 might be Discovery, but the next one might be an Apple devices and you need to integrate to AirWatch, but get that documented, understand why you're doing it, where you're getting it from, and then integrate out from there.
Totally agree.
So the third point we like to always call out with our clients is establishing who's involved. And where we're coming from with that is, are you in a multi-supplier environment, or do security need to be involved? Do you have multiple different departments with different firewalls and different pieces of information? So we try and say right up front, before you even try and do a discovery implementation, is who's going to be involved in this? We see it so often, and we always call this out at the start anyway. But clients will even go to the extent of buying the product. They buy the discovery and they tell us, we're ready. They've given us a purchase order and they want to start a project. You get in the room, you've given the prereqs a few weeks before, and then someone goes, oh no, well, that data center is owned by our supplier, and then they've got to go and ask that supplier for permission, then they need a quote, then they need to go into the security process, and that could be 8, 12, 16 weeks. We've got a client right now that's struggling to get their supplier to stand up resource to work with us on the discovery design, So
it's great advice, and because we see this a lot, so the technology's there, to help with this discovery and get up and running quickly. But actually there is some pre-work that needs to be done, to your point, in terms of getting organised. What do we need, who do we need, and when do we need to step in and have these processes ready to go? So absolutely engage early in the process.
And we for us to try and assist our clients with that, we try and do something. We don't see all of our competitors doing this, or maybe not any, but we have a kind of 2 to 4 week pre-project phase, and we will literally give them information, templates, what we expect from them, whether that be credentials, firewall rules, suppliers who are involved, whatever that may be. And we always try and give that to them as early as possible so they can just take that away rather than walking on day one with us. We're on the clock. Then we tell them a bunch of stuff and then money's being burnt, projects off cost, off scope again, and no one's happy. So
great approach. We all know IT is getting easier, certainly with ServiceNow, simplified IT, but we still need to take this approach to...
It's got to be the way it's done, for sure. So the next big one for us is security, and I'm sure, in fact, I'm very confident that security it can be an issue in all organisations in terms of these kind of more advanced tools and things that need credentials and access to devices, but especially if you're in a regulated industry or especially if you're in a public sector agency. So we work with the public sector a lot. and security there is taken very seriously. There's potentially public data and public services and these kind of things. And we've seen cases in the past of security accreditation to get this tooling in have taken up to 2 years once, and that was a couple of years ago, but that was how long that process took. So again, when we even talk to the clients about doing this kind of project, we say, are security on board? Can they come to the next meeting? Engage them as early as possible, get the stakeholders in, and let's get the landscape of what we need to provide on the table. So, what are the governance procedures we've got to go through? Are they going to want to understand data center information or, encryption ciphers, and what level of detail they're going to want to go to? When will they need it by? And then we put a plan together and we try and do our best to assist them or even produce that information for them to get that through. I think we're more fortunate than most in the fact we've been through those painful processes many times now, and more often than not we kind of probably know 90-95% of what that's going to look like, but you've still got to get those people. There's always going to be a left field question or requirement in each agency or organisation that you haven't quite considered from a security perspective. Yeah,
of course, and I think it's great that you can bring that experience to that organisation when you help them, and you're right, it is about getting that plan together, because it can get complex quite quickly. So get it documented, get it detailed, what you want to achieve.
Brilliant. So one of the next things we talk about often is establishing the scope. So, and we talk about this in our CMDB design phase, but we also then talk about this again, even from a discovery implementation phase. So, are we going to discover everything? So I can give you an example of a particular client we worked with last year to do a CMDB and discovery implementation. We were actually doing a refresh, so they already had an implementation of this from a previous partner, and they'd done things themselves with it over the years. It'd been a multi-year journey for them. But the outcome was, initially when they turned Discovery on, they had over 1 million CIs flood into the CMDB. And even with that 1 million CIs, half of which they didn't want, they still had other things missing that they did want. And then you had accuracy, completeness, and all the usual things that come with it. So the first thing we said to them was, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the burning? You've got this much time and budget with us. What are the burning issues? And how do we need to implement Discovery to tick those off at the start? And what that scope allows us to do is, first of all, look at how big a challenge is this? Is this actually quite a big project? Do we need to cut this into phases? Do we pick a particular business service or a particular subnet or a particular challenge to tackle first? Prove the technology works, go through the pain of firewall rules, security, make sure that everything's in place, maybe before branching into a bigger kind of a big bang at the end and hit the rest of it, Yeah,
totally agree with that. And it leads me into what would be my top tip, and that really is about starting small. And I've heard you talk about this in terms of CMDB overall. You don't need to go in and as you say, go and get your discovery running and go and try and find everything in your organisation, because it might find everything. And then kind of like, how do you deal with that? It's too much. Start small, find an area to focus on. Find out what it brings back. Does it work? How's it working? What kind of information is it giving you? And then you can slowly grow that out, and kind of like you can show the success as you go. So try not to go in and capture everything, because you might not be able to manage that in one hit.
In most cases,
so phase that approach.
And I think ideally within those small phases or chunks that you prepare, if you can link those back to some of those business goals, so you actually do a bit of work and say, did it achieve what I was supposed to achieve, and did it achieve what my FD or whoever wanted me to achieve?
Exactly.
If it does, great, because all of a sudden you've got more buy-in as well, and you've got the cultural awareness coming into the product.
You can, it's an agile approach. You can measure that success in your first stage, and then just build it out. Because it is an investment, so it's better to be able to go back and say, look what we've done on our first.
This is what we've achieved.
Discovery phase, and the benefits from that.
Brilliant. The next thing we're going to talk about is, don't forget software assets. So even though Discovery, primarily people talk about it with regards to hardware and relationship building.
Laptop, desktop.
We know it pulls software information in. And what we actually find is, more often than not, a lot of clients want us to come in and do a CMDB project. But when you get there, what they're actually really worried about is software license and compliance in. So obviously we know ServiceNow's got a dedicated software asset management application now, which is great. But bearing that in mind when you're looking at Discovery, so Discovery will feed into software asset management. So if you've got this software asset management goal, or maybe that someone hasn't quite communicated yet in this project, and then you put Discovery out there and you've left a big chunk of the network out, or maybe you didn't do end user device, you just did infrastructure as a start, and then someone in some department somewhere is saying, well, why can't I do my software asset management now?
Yep.
We see it as a big challenge. At the moment, a lot of the clients are saying, we want to do CMDB, yeah, but then we really want to understand where our software asset position lies, and they see this as a precursor to that. So just telling people to keep that in their minds as they plan this is kind of where that tip comes from for us.
And that's the enterprise wide play, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why we get the value and power of using a platform like ServiceNow, because you can start, and then once you understand that, you can do your first bit, as you say, discovering and understanding software you've got in terms of some information, and then you can grow that into true software asset management and recovering licenses and using your licenses in an appropriate way, and retrieving cost and so on.
Definitely, yeah. Great.
I've worked in IT for a long time. In previous life, I've been problem manager, change manager, and so on. So I'm sure you'll be used to this story. So I've sat in a change management meeting, and we're trying to approve a change, and you'd be asking the right questions. What's the impact of this change? And I've got a software engineer in front of me saying, "Oh, it'd be fine. There's no impact. Trust me." And you're like, "Okay, we keep digging into it's many years ago, nothing to do with service." And what happens the next day when we do that change? Something goes down, we lose a service, huge impact, and we're like, "Oh, okay, well, there was a problem. It was linked to this." We didn't know. We didn't have the information. We just had information about a server. We didn't have anything outside of that. Where you start bringing in discovery, and therefore we're able to link assets together, we can start to get a picture of what supports what and how are they linked and where are they connected. So if we hit this switch off over there, what would the impact be? So we can make better decisions on that visibility. Then we can take it a step further and bring in service mapping, where actually we can apply business services to that. So we can say, well, okay, I know this asset is linked to this business service, which is a critical business service, and we absolutely cannot do anything around that on this daytime, whatever it might be. So it's bringing that service awareness to operational teams to be able to make much better decisions. So that's the prevention side of it, which is fantastic. But if there is a problem, well, actually we can say, okay, I know there's a problem on this asset, and I can see exactly up, down, left, right, what's being impacted by this. So if there's 2 or 3 on at the same time, we can say low impact there, high impact here. It's on a till system or whatever. We can't bring in revenue. Let's go and fix that problem first.
No, it's a really good point. And I think some of the stuff we do with our clients, even before they may be on an ITOM journey and doing discovery, and maybe mapping is down here. And we always say to them as well, get some business services in. Even if you give us up front a manual list of the top layer and the labor node, maybe 10, 5, 10, 20 services, whatever. Let's start getting some intelligence in there so we've got some kind of context on what this means. And then when you do come to map those services with service mapping, going back to your earlier point about not boiling the ocean, again, we always say pick 3 to 5 key services, pick the pilot, do a pilot, work through the technical issues, credentials, firewalls, all the application access, all that stuff. Prove the pudding, and then then embark on a company-wide kind of project to get that value.
Perfect. And where I get really excited is we talked about orchestration at the start. Is now what we can do is we can say, well, if there is a problem on a particular CI, and we know what that business server is, we have that information to make decisions. So we can prevent it by saying, well, I know that this might happen on this particular service. If it's happened before, we can do this, this, and this. So actually, there is no need for anybody to get involved. We can automate, the fixes or whatever it might be, and that is absolutely huge.
Real value comes with it, doesn't it?
Real value, being able to say, if this had have happened, it would have cost your organisation, downtime, cost. Didn't happen. It's a really easy one to sell back into the business. It's a nice message, and it's where everyone's got to be aiming at the end of the day. You've got to set your goal there. So my next tip for people really is around, don't forget cloud. And the reason I call that out is that more often, certainly in the past, and I think hopefully we're seeing less of it now because people are becoming very cloud-centric in their thinking. But we see a lot of people want to do discovery and CMDB on their physical stuff, or maybe their own virtual DCs, but they forget about the cloud stuff. Even to the point where one client I had in particular a couple of years ago said, well, I don't want to discover in the cloud. I've got kind of AWS tools and Azure tools. They'll tell me what's there. And I had to bring him kind of back to the table and kind of say, but where are the relationships? If you've got a business service running here, maybe a payment service, and it's using some of your on-prem stuff and some of your own DC stuff, and then there's some services running up in AWS,
you get an incident or you're doing a change impact analysis, unless you've linked those sources together and got those relationships drawn out, you're back where you were before without that intelligence, without that context, and leaves everything in complete mess. And I think he didn't even realize at the time that the ServiceNow discovery tool was capable of discovering into those cloud environments. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about some tips or some advice on what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly, and absolutely it can discover, and it needs to, because as you said, this stuff is moving quickly now. Yeah. So what we're seeing is, and I've seen it in previous work in life as well, that we're able to access these services much easier and quicker than ever before, which is great, because that's helping organisations. But you're right to point out, we need to manage control of that. Yeah. Yes, in the instance they are, so just think of, spinning up AWS servers and not manage them correctly, bring them up and down, whatever, but also more to the point to linking that together through the whole estate. So great that you are sharing that message that you can absolutely manage that and link those together. Yeah,
and I think just touching on one of those points about the fact that people spin environments up and down all day, and I think that was kind of part of his argument was, well, I spin up 1,000 servers every day, and we kind of said, that's fine, we don't need to discover down to that level. We can go down to the hypervisor, or we can say these ones are always on, and we can exclude these other ones from there. And if they're not going to be a need for them to be in there in the day, we don't want to keep pulling stuff in and out. So always kind of think about when you're doing cloud, how far down do I need to go into that stack? Do I want to ignore certain areas of that cloud? But always include it is our key message there. So one of the final tips I want to give is around the ongoing governance, both from a process perspective and a technical perspective. And we talked about this earlier with CMDB, more around the config management process, but even specific to discovery, what a lot of people don't realize is that this does need ongoing maintenance. So we were with a particular client recently who's new to us. They're already in the ecosystem. They pay for discoveries, which is nice. They're investing in the tool. But when we got there, they were kind of, long faces. We're not happy with what we've got. And you dig into why, and it's because they haven't touched it for a year or two. Yeah. So what they've ended up with now is, decommissioned kit, credentials have changed, firewall rules have changed, so thousands of errors in discovery, which then undermines the accuracy, completeness of the CMDB. So then the CMDB value is undermined, and the whole kind of investment gets called into question. And it's not a nice place for them to be in either. So one of the key messages we always give them is, look, this stuff's got to be maintained. Now, it doesn't need to be a full-time job, and in some organisations it might be an hour or two a week, but someone needs to be looking at that and saying, is discovery healthy? Is it finding any errors today, things it can't talk to that it used to be able to talk to? Has some changes taken place where we now need to put new subnets into discovery to keep things going? But really it's about bringing all that governance into place and making sure that just, even if it's a tiny bit of effort, to make sure that this gets maintained, as we talked about in our first video, as a living kind of breathing thing really. Yep. We obviously offer a managed service to a number of our clients where we run this for them, and part of that onboarding is not just looking at, okay, they're going to raise incidents and requests to us, it's what parts of the suite are they running? So are they running discovery? Are they running service mapping? Are they running SecOps? Whatever that may be. And then we put in our own best practice checks around each of those parts of the platform and ensure that they can, we're maintaining their platform to the standard they need.
Yeah, governance is key to make sure they retain the value of your CMDB and your discovery in general. And it's important that we leverage the capabilities within ServiceNow. So I'm thinking around, dashboards and reporting and that high level of visibility and information that we can provide to say, this is where you need to spend your time. So that governance doesn't become what we might be used to traditionally, very manual,
like very a Word document and someone's walking around with. Yeah.
It's just a nightmare. Let's make it as easy and as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and keeping it modern and sexy, which is what people kind of expect, at home now and then more so in the workplace today
exactly
as well.
What we want to be doing. We want to be removing those unnecessary mundane tasks. Yeah. But actually, you're right, there is still a level of governance that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of our FlyForm kind of best practice tips and some of yours for around the ITOM suite and populating. Is there anything kind of that we may not have talked about, or some things that maybe people don't know about CMDB or discovery that you think would be good to call out?
So if I think about discovery, there are a couple there that I think kind of, like I'd call them an underdog features.
Okay.
And it's strange to call these out because, I'm really passionate about technologies like artificial intelligence and all the automation that we get from ServiceNow and how we help organizations move forward with their digital transformation. But the two I'm thinking about is the first one is called data certification.
Okay.
And what this is we've done the discovery, okay, and we've got our facts. We know what we've got. We know what that bit of equipment is and some information about it.
Yeah.
This is where actually we bring a bit of human element back into play, and we say, well, okay, we still need to do some kind of checks every now and then.
Yeah.
So we make that easier and we automate where possible to say, if a piece of equipment has been down for 2 weeks, a month, whatever, why?
Okay.
Just tell me why.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a server, we want to know about, is it in a sandboxed environment or is it actually part of a critical solution? So it's bringing everything into the loop there, so we can, make sure that we do have complete transparency of our CI.
And does that data certification, is that also things like, is it running the right OS level it's supposed to be, or is that under like a compliance section? Or is
that is my other one. You stole it from me.
Perfect.
So that's where we start to look at something called desired state.
Okay.
So now what we're saying, okay, again, we've got our discovery, we found out the information, but actually we can say our level of standard, let's use a server, must be whatever spec, or an OS must be a certain level, whatever it might be. And then we can feed that back into the system, so we can say, just go and look at these because they don't meet your minimum requirement or your threshold or whatever it is, and then we can take appropriate action.
I suppose even on the back of that, you could automatically raise tasks and changes and things and just go as far as you want with it from...
Automate it through the whole organisation.
Great. Thanks for coming along today and being part of this with us. It's been absolutely invaluable hearing your kind of insights and tips on this stuff. And thank you again to everyone who's watching. We hope you found this best practices for populating your CMDB and the ITOM suite helpful. If you are embarking on a CMDB or discovery project, or maybe you're in the middle of one and you don't know where to turn, or maybe you just want to have a conversation about a point we've raised today, please feel free to reach out to us at FlyForm. You can find us at flyform.com or on LinkedIn. Or alternatively, please feel free to reach out to Adam at ServiceNow, where you can find it at servicenow.com.